Let me tell you what a nightmare that was. Most of the time, it just feels like the news extravaganza that it was, that I got real obsessed with the story, like it captured my imagination. It doesn't usually feel real, but some days it really feels like it happened, that I really did know him, that there really was a body in his closet. And then I feel really angry at him, not for what he did to her, if he killed her, because that's between them, but for what he did for me. And I keep asking myself, just as though I'm kind of haunted, did he do it? Did he kill her? I went to a party, and there was this one guy who was a writer there who wrote for an LA paper. He was talking about real-life stories, and he wanted everyone to go around the room and tell one of the most outrageous stories that was real. So I was the last person in the circle. We were sitting around this coffee table, and everyone told stories, and I must say they were some good stories, because people's lives certainly are filled with such good stories. But I knew that I had a story. When I first started to tell it, I was really interested in people's reactions. I would just casually drop it over coffee, that there was something really strange that had just happened, that this guy who I'd been seeing for the last 4 years, the police just found a body in his apartment, and that it's been mummified and decapitated and wrapped in plastic and stuffed in a trunk, where he's kept her for the last 2 years. Well, one of the funniest things about it was that when the news first came out and it became news all over the television, my mother, it came out that her head was missing and that they couldn't find it. And so my mother, who had all of his pots, these huge plants in her backyard, she was keeping them for him, thought maybe, well, it would be an ideal place for him to hide her head. And so she dumped out all these big plants, and she never could find the skeleton. And then it came out over the news, no, that the head was there. It was just packed way down in her chest, and they couldn't see it right off the bat. I first heard about this whole thing when my best friend called. She said, "Look, are you sitting down? His name is all over the paper, and that somebody was found in a trunk in his closet, and that been mummified. And then a few days later it came out that it really was her, and that the dental records had they were the only thing that had been remained to let none of her hair was there. And then they found blood in the floorboards of the bedroom that matched her blood type. And he claims he was innocent and framed. And I don't know whether to believe him, but the evidence is crazy against him. The reason they got to search the apartment was because her family, after she disappeared for a couple of years, got real suspicious and hired detectives, and they checked the apartment back records and found out that the tenants that lived directly under them complained that there was a bad smell, like some decaying thing had coming from the ceiling in the closet, oozing down, and they thought that maybe some animal had crawled in during the winter and died there. And it was real funny, even when they searched the apartment and found the body, he didn't even know why they were taking him to jail. Well, he was out on bail, and he skipped town. He's an international fugitive now. Nobody knows where he is exactly. I first met at a party that was just a block away from where I was living, and I thought he was a real interesting character. He had the kind of energy that as soon as he'd walk into a room, all heads would turn. He was just incredibly magnetic, and he had a huge body, and in the 4 years that I knew him, his chest cavity really doubled in size. And also I thought that he was somebody I had to be really careful of, because he just seemed like he had could have such power over me. He was living with this girl who evidently, he might have murdered. Certainly all the facts seemed to make it seem like he must have done it. She had just gotten an apartment across the street, and they had sort of like broken ties. Not broken up, just basically she was interested in somebody else. And he was real clear, he was seeing me. She was a dancer who really wasn't strong enough to be a dancer. And she was kind of sick anyway, emotionally she was a little unstable. I always thought like she was epileptic and I'm diabetic, and I kind of identified with her. And in some kind of a fashion, I thought that, well, she must just have needed the break. But I don't know, my mother always thought that he killed her. But I thought, people just don't go around killing people. Right after she disappeared, he took all the clothes out of the closet and hung them on a rack on the bedroom wall, and then locked the closet. And I thought that was a little strange, but I never thought there'd be a body in the closet. And then about a year later, he moved all of his clothes back, and her blankets that her mother made, he kept on top of the chest. So I was always sleeping under these blankets that were kept on the trunk that had her body in it for 2 years. And I didn't have a sense of smell at the time because I was on medication, so I couldn't smell a thing. And I thought whether he killed her or not, I felt I'd never feel comfortable, and I'd never know. And it seemed like a hell of a way to continue a relationship if I felt I'd never be able to be sure. And in actuality, there were so many emotional things that happened to him about the time that she disappeared that I felt that if I hadn't seen that, like he didn't go out, he had all his food sent up, he shaved his head and his beard, but people didn't know this because he never went out. Nobody saw him upset, but he was upset. He was very upset. And we would talk for the longest time about what would make a person disappear. And I kept saying, well, she's only disappeared for 3 weeks. There's no reason to be this upset. No reason to think she's not going to come back. And I thought, how peculiar that he should be this distraught when all she's gone is for a couple of weeks. Do you know that I still wonder about whether he killed her? Do you think that he killed her?
Gee! Does anybody know? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G.I. Joe. Hey, Joe, where you been? You got plastic arms that never bend, but sterilia is for real. Talk to us about Barbie and Ken. Barbie and Ken a friend. Tell us all about Barbie and Ken, Barbie and men, Ken and men, and how their friendship never ends. First you're dead, you're back to life. It's a dull life, it's a dull life. We get killed and we stay dead. That's real life, no ideal life for me. Street life, nothing new. Midge accepts a date with you. Can she dance? Can she twist? Don't look for death in guys like this. 2-inch waist, what a waste. Still sterilia is for realia. As for answers with painted eyes, don't spend your time with dolly guys.
He always said, well, when she feels like coming back, she'll be back. The whole thing was just so crazy. It was just as though she was a possession of his. Like she was a space that wasn't being occupied, and so he absorbed her. And after he absorbed her, he became like her. It was as though he consumed her innocence and became like a child. Well, he was better in a few months and started going out. And we never went out of his apartment for the first 2 years that we were seeing each other, so people never knew that we even saw each other, which really makes it seem more like a fantasy and that I'm making it up than it even is. This whole murder thing was sort of the icing on a cake in terms of a certain violence that had happened over a 10-year period. And I started to realize if I courted violence too much more, I might get myself seriously hurt. Oh, this thing has just been so crazy. It just makes me wonder what has been said by this whole thing. The weirdest thing was that I never saw the body. I never saw the dental records. I never saw anything. I just read about it in the paper, or friends of mine saw it on the news, but it never was real. It was just a bizarre story that somehow happened to my life, but it never was real. But I had this dream that was so real. I dreamed that it was me and not her that he killed 2 years ago. And that's another story.